This is John Gilroy from the Federal Tech Podcast.
This is Eric Levine from Socure.
Today, we're going to talk about predictive identity document verification. Hit the music, Manny.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, where industry leaders share insights on innovation with a focus on reducing cost and improving security for federal technology. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcast.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guest is Eric Levine. He's the head of DocV at a company called Socure, S-O-C-U-R-E. We teased a little bit talking about identity document verification. And before we begin, what I want to do is have some fun facts, because I did research this morning and I got all kinds of fun facts. Now, you may not like PBS, you may like PBS, but PBS says, according to the Inspector General, $200 billion was lost in fraud. Okay, maybe you don't believe those. What about NBC? NBC says $78 billion. Okay. Well, what about AP? The AP says $86 billion. What about CNN? Well, Eric, sooner or later, people got to admit there's billions of dollars being lost through fraud. And one of the best ways to stop it is with identity, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. Knowing that the person that you're interacting with, whether they are collecting some sort of government benefits or accessing some types of systems, whether virtually or even in some cases in person, really knowing that person is who they say they are and that they have the credentials to prove it is a critical component of stopping fraud.
Right. There are people in a business who know what's going on. Some people don't. I mean, there's companies that merge with other companies, and there's been a recent announcement at Socure that I think is going to make it a much more palatable offering for the federal government. Now, Eric, why don't you maybe paint the picture here of what happened just over the summer here and what that means for my listeners?
Yeah. So in June, Socure announced that they acquired Berbix, which was the company that I co-founded and was the CEO of prior to the acquisition. And we were in the business of doing government-issued photo ID checks. That was 100% our focus at Berbix. My experience prior to founding Berbix was I led the engineering trust and safety team at Airbnb for a number of years, where I was on the buyer side for a number of different identity products, and frankly saw a lot of the challenges that existed with the products that were out there. Founded a company to try to close some of those gaps, build new products, and improve upon what I had seen. And after 5 years of operating Berbix and selling our product to a number of different companies across many different sectors, we were acquired by Socure, where we are now able to expand the reach and the impact with the same technology that has now been integrated into Socure's identity platform through its predictive document verification system, also known as DocV.
So this is like a baseball team acquiring a couple relief pitchers or starting pitchers at the deadline. I mean, it's really propelling Socure into a brave new world, isn't it?
That's right. Socure had already made a number of really incredible investments into their document verification product prior to the acquisition. But bringing these two teams together has really accelerated the timeline and roadmap, and frankly, the performance of the system by a significant margin. Just bringing the sort of two complementary teams together, where the Socure team was much more focused on, say, the user experience and some of the more computer vision type of problems, whereas the Berbix team was more focused on the forensic analysis, data extraction, and bringing these two groups together has had a pretty meaningful impact in terms of the performance that we're able to see. And not only from the sort of user experience side of the user interface that people see, but even things as simple as like how quickly can our customer get a response. That's a key element of providing a really high quality and user-friendly document verification experience, is being able to make sure that your users aren't getting stopped for, in some cases, tens of seconds or minutes while those things are being checked on the back end. We're able to provide a response pretty close to instantly within a couple of short seconds, which is super exciting and something that's pretty differentiated in the market today.
My son and I went to see, the Need for Speed movie with Maverick this summer, Top Gun. And that need for speed came back from the first movie, I think, years ago when Top Gun was released. So everyone has a need for speed. So this morning, I did a speed test on my company website, and I got it under seconds. That's pretty good. Now, in my world, the rule is if it's 3 seconds or slower, people are going to bounce out of there. And so I think there's, Socure may have some claims for really being speedy and being fast and really giving a better, dare I say, a customer experience for Federal ID, but it's a better customer experience just because you can speed it up, can't you?
Absolutely. If people are going through a verification process, they submit their document, the sort of typical document verification process is you submit the front of your, let's say, driver's license, the back of your driver's license, and a selfie. Those two things are being compared against each other. And for most of the providers out there, you may be waiting tens of seconds to minutes to find out whether it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And if it's a thumbs down, oftentimes you're asked to go through again, right? To go through the process again and wait tens of seconds to minutes again. And that can be really quite painful. And so some of the innovations that we've done, not only to improve the speed where we can return that result in typically under 4 seconds and in many cases under 2 seconds, but also providing feedback to the user as they're going through the process so that you don't have to repeat it starting over from the beginning if there's something wrong with one of those documents. And so we think that this is something that will have a pretty meaningful impact, particularly as we try to expand access to government services through online portals and whatnot, making sure that folks are able to access those without a major user experience hit through that type of incredible wait time.
I'm going to have to pull this out, maybe get a transcript and pull this out and put it on a wall somewhere, because if you look into what other providers have, they talk about 60, 70 seconds, not 6 or 7, 60, 70 seconds. And so, maybe you're listening to this going, well, it's always a minute. Well, guess what? It's not always. Well, I've always done it this way. Well, maybe there's another way. It's just humans are just, what's always done it this way. Well, maybe turn on the air conditioning. That there's ways to make things faster that people don't even realize. They accept it. They just accept it, don't they, Eric?
That's right. And I think that, my hope and my expectation is that the consumer expectations as it relates to, or, the sort of average Joe citizens expectations in terms of the type of experience that they should get when they're going through these types of services. Maybe today it is, okay, it's a minute, maybe a minute and a half, but that shouldn't be the expectation. Right. And, the technology has evolved. The people have really, I think that at this point, to your point, if a website takes longer than 10 seconds to load, you're out of there, right? But in the 90s, that wasn't the case. In the 90s, if it was 10 seconds, that was typical. And so as we evolve into the future, consumer expectations change and consumer demand for those sort of top tier modern user experiences continues to expand as well. And excited to be on the forefront of that.
If you are listening to this and don't know much about Socure, it's SOCURE.me. And if you go to that site, you'll see like award and award and award, and then best place to work and growth and Cloud 100 and blah. It gets to the point where there's so many awards there, Eric. I just go and look, try to read them yourself. There's a whole lot going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, I would say that that was one of the things that really attracted me as we were going through the acquisition process to join ranks with Socure. Was just the incredible technology, the performance that they were able to deliver to their customers, the way in which our product really was complementary to the product that they had been building. And just frankly, the opportunity to be part of a company that had a full identity solution that can really solve everything from fraud to more like passive verification needs to the document verification component, and being able to have all of these in part of one company that can provide all of these seamlessly and have the best performing product in the market for each of these different solutions was super exciting. And so I'm a fairly new Socurian at this point, but it's been really just a very thoughtful, smart, driven group of individuals. It's been a great couple of months.
Well, Eric, you're new to the podcast. This is the part of the podcast where I read a quote from a famous philosopher, and you have to tell me who said it. Okay, you ready for this one? Here we go. Here's a quote. I've dedicated my career to making the internet a safer place. That's you, buddy. That's you on YouTube. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, now we have the motivation. I mean, hey, well, why is he doing this? Why is he likes the weather? No, I mean, that seems to be the motivation that fits in perfectly what Socure is trying to do, doesn't it?
Yes. And when I first founded Berbix, my co-founder and I, we talked to each other about why were we motivated to build a company, and it always came down to impact and improving the lives of people, right? And that is really the motivator for me. And that is, again, why I was so excited to team up with Socure, because of the ability to take what we had built, which we were incredibly proud of, and multiply that impact and just be able to bring that sort of those advances in technology to a wider audience. Socure has certainly a large and growing presence in the public sector, but also a large presence in the private sector as well. And so being able to really, within a couple of months, be able to have this technology powering so many of the world's largest financial institutions is just really exciting, among other verticals.
Most of my listeners are interested in what Eric can do for me, what the company can do for me, how to hit I think we know a little bit about your company, a little bit about your motivation. And now we got to delve into some of the technical aspects here, because it's part and parcel of what people want to know. And maybe it's a little bit of hot sauce here, just a little touch here. And so there is a product called DocV, D-O-C and capital V as in Victor. Tell us about this and where this fits in this whole story.
Yeah, so DocV, or the full name is Predictive Document Verification, is really, again, that process of being able to take images of someone's government-issued photo ID, being able to validate that it is a legitimate document, being able to match that the person who's depicted on that document is the person who's going through that process by collecting a selfie and doing an automated comparison, and being able to do so seamlessly. Now, this sounds basic, but the technology that underlies the process of being able to do that, not only in a user-friendly way, but in a highly accurate way, is really state of the art. We're talking about bleeding edge computer vision problems. We're talking about patented techniques to detect fake IDs. We're talking about extremely sophisticated mechanisms to ensure that the person who's going through that process is a live person and not, say, a printout or a cutout. And so really being able to weave that together with all of the identity graph that Socure has been cultivating over the course of the last 11 years they've been in operation is really a huge component of what allows this solution to have the type of performance that we're able to demonstrate. So we're super excited about that. DocV, again, sort of stands for document verification, and specifically that document would be the government issued photo ID, whether it's a driver's license, a passport, an ID card, a green card, whatever the case may be. Those types of documents, whether domestically or internationally, we aim to be able to process all of those automatically with the same level of performance that I was mentioning before, with that very quick turnaround time, ensuring that folks are able to complete an onboarding experience, whether it's for collecting a government benefit or renewing their driver's license or whatever the case may be, as seamlessly as possible.
If you would like to get more information on predictive identity document verification, I'll put a link in the show notes to a PDF you guys have. It's very simple, block, interesting information. If you want to know more about the company or this specific product, you can download it. It's easy, and I'll have a link in the show notes, no problem at all. I was listening carefully when we talked about speed, and we made a little joke about 70 seconds versus 7 seconds. It just dawned on me, okay, Eric, you know, in 6 seconds or 8 seconds. What if you make all kinds of mistakes? So what good is it if you're not accurate? So, so you get a car that can go 200 miles an hour if it's going to blow apart in 50 yards. What good? So what about accuracy? Are you maybe cutting back on accuracy, or how do you get that as well?
No, in fact, we've done quite a bit of benchmarking on our side to try to understand the accuracy of our product across the industry. And we're seeing that not only are we able to provide faster responses, but we're also able to provide more accurate responses. This ends up being a major challenge. In my past experience, I've worked with companies that say we'll review 100% of the theoretically automated government issued photo ID checks that they're performing, right? So they'll use a service, they'll use a vendor that is purporting to be able to provide a conclusive result, whether it's an accept or a reject. but that the results are so untrustworthy that they end up staffing a team to just double check the results that are coming back. And this ends up being extremely expensive, not only from just a pure cost perspective, but from a people perspective, right? And it is a bit of a soul-sucking job to have to look at ID after ID after ID and knowing that if you let one through, fraudsters are going to be attacking your platform. So you have to be on. So this is, and not only that, but it's also subject to, humans are humans, right? And there's only so much that you can do from people get tired, people, things start to blur together, people get into a zone where maybe it's a little harder to pay attention. And so really having this automated technology that is not only able to make those decisions, but make decisions that you can trust is critical, right? You have to be able to automate this. You have to be able to rely on a service that can accurately distinguish between whether it's a legitimately issued ID that was, say, issued by the California DMV, like my driver's license, or something that has been fraudulently generated, whether it's being ordered from the dark web, whether it's being manipulated through software, whether it is something that's stolen, right? If I steal your driver's license, I shouldn't be able to claim your benefits, right? And so really being able to think about all of the different ways in which a service can be exploited, and thinking about layering in protections, because at the end of the day, like you led off with this, but it's around fraud, right? Stopping fraud is the key. And the way that I personally like to think about fraud is that it is a series of walls that you need to put up, right? You need to have several layers of defense in order to make it extremely hard to circumvent any one defense and get in to the keys of the kingdom. Defense in depth, it's a very common phrase that's used when it comes to building secure computer networks. And it's one that I think is equally applicable when it comes to building fraud defenses. And it's something that we have leveraged very seriously and robustly here, particularly at Socure, thinking about how all of our different products can be weaved together to build a multi-layered defense against fraud.
Eric, I know a couple of people at Socure, and we always have a lot of fun and tell bad jokes. And I don't want to get serious, but I have to get serious. So hang on here. I mean, a lot of bad stuff's been happening in Hawaii. And maybe those people need help from the federal government. So they have to go to the FEMA site. All of a sudden, all that hard work that people put into as far as identity verification and speed and ease of use, all of a sudden, someone who's in a tough situation can benefit from that. And it sounds all theoretical. Executive order, ease of use. And then Eric talks about speed. And then maybe someone like Matt talks about, accuracy. But what comes down to, it's people need help from the federal government. And this can really alleviate that problem. I mean, this is really like cause and effect here, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, really thinking about the full experience of people. I mean, these are people who, they need assistance right away, but building systems that allow for shortcuts is how the fraudsters slip in. And that's where we're seeing these like massive losses, is that there are systems out there where maybe it's a little bit easier to circumvent the protections that are in place, whatever the case may be, or maybe there are no protections in place in the first place. But being able to really thread that needle, right? You need to be able to not only stop the fraud, but let the good users in. And that is critical, right? I can build you a system that can stop 100% of bad actors by stopping everyone. Or I could build you a system that allows everyone through, including fraudsters. And so you need to find the right balance. And I believe that we built something, especially if you look at the entire Socure product suite, right? We have passive verification tools through our Socure Verify product line. We have our active verification tools using the Socure's DocV product line. Weaving and then we of course have our entire fraud suite, which is what really put Socure on the map in the first place. And being able to weave all of these together allows us to have a tool chain that can provide the best possible user experience, because for most people, you don't need to do a document verification, at least maybe upon like repeat visits, or whether it is a something where you have reason to believe that this is something that you can trust right out of the gate. We've done we've done quite a bit of work across all of our sectors to try to allow for passive verification at first. So passive verification would be where, let's say you're creating some sort of account, or this is the first time you're interacting with some service. You provide some amount of your information, whether it's your name, date of birth, social security number. We also have device information, like where you're coming from, the IP address, say maybe a phone number. And we're able to triangulate all of that information together to come up with an idea of whether or not this is a risky transaction that's being engaged with. And then in the cases that it is riskier, you don't want to stop people from being able to access services just because, say, they changed address and changed their phone number at the same time. That maybe is a higher risk factor. And so you step them up to document verification. So you have a certain proportion of your user base going through document verification to collect the government issued photo ID. And in some cases, you need to collect the government issued photo ID anyways. But really, the point I'm trying to make here is that in many cases, based on the information that you're already collecting, you can often make a determination of the risk level of a particular individual using that, what we call passive verification, because there's no additional action required on the part of the user, versus active verification, where the user has to do something explicit, like scan their photo ID. And so being able to, again, weave these technologies together allows for what I consider to be a really fantastic blend of conversion, getting good users onboarded successfully, and fraud mitigation and fraud detection. So again, maybe I've drank a little bit of the Socure Kool-Aid, but I really do think that there's something very, very special happening here.
Yeah, and I think that's a good summary of making it easier for the citizen's experience. I mean, it could be an active manner, passive manner. The guy in Hawaii doesn't care. Eric, they just need that access to some, I don't know what it is. It could be some kind of funds. It could be some kind of help down the road, and right now there's people applying, getting frustrated, and they're bailing. And so we have to work on that aspect of it. Well, I think you've given our listeners a pretty good idea of predictive identity document verification. We're going to have to meet up again and expand on this in a few months, and hope there's not another tragedy we have to focus in on. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Eric Levine, head of DocV at Socure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Federal Tech Podcast. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcast.